reassembly of carburetor number 1. This carburetor will use a lot of the original parts, most of the original parts. If you want to see the rebuild of the one with the full expensive kit, you can fast forward to that in the video. But this one will simply use new pieces like this throttle shaft gasket or seal. I've made my own gasket. This is kind of the economical approach, I suppose. You know, if someone was taking things apart, cleaning them up, putting it back together, this is a lot of what you would do. As you can see, I've got everything sort of spread out for the bottom components, top components. I'm probably going to start with the bottom bowl assembly because I think there's fewer parts. There's no rhyme or reason, you know, as far as I'm concerned, of how it goes back together. There are some things that have to go in before others, but I just sort of start kind of opposite how I took it apart. I do have both the 420 manual, which, you know, it conveniently it says refer to service manual for the 40 series tractors. So I do have that, but it's not much more help when it comes to taking apart and putting back together the carburetor itself. You're just as well off to use the little identification sheet that comes with the carb kit, but it's not very helpful either. It says take apart, put back together, no step by step. We can start with our little main jet, that little nozzle that we had so much fun getting out on the first one. Before I go and put him back in, I want to make sure all those holes are open. I don't know if you can see those on there. To do that, I'm going to take a little carburetor cleaner and just kind of give it a little bit of a blow through to make sure, yeah, that there's no crud or anything nasty still stuck in there. Before putting that back in, there's this little ring that goes on there. Seat it on that and back in place. If a guy really wanted to, he could tap these threads out, but I've got them pretty clean. Everything's moving real easy and nice. That in place, and we'll move over to our throttle, or not our throttle, our choke shaft here. The shaft that it rides on. Originally, this little crusty guy here was kind of a little bit of a, call it a seal, I suppose, that was tucked into this recess. I've got this little felt replacement I'm gonna tuck in there. That was, again, a little extra from one of the other kits that I've had. He goes in there. Little bracket goes on the outside. Put him in place. This is what will not only hold the choke cable when it comes up through, but it acts as an anchor for the little spring that keeps the choke typically open. Choke shaft, this little spring, the little U goes towards the arm, the little hole. We'll anchor on that, so we'll set him in place. Kind of put that little hole around there. And then, before we get too far, put that little guy around him, bend him around, and then we can anchor everybody, and that's going to hold him tight up against that. So when we have our choke lever and we pull it back, it'll be the natural state of things to allow it to open back up for us. With that in place, we can take our choke plate, and we want to put him in. Now you could easily put this in one of either way. I'm going to put it in the way I think it should go in. I may go back and find out it's the wrong way, but if I put the choke plate in this way, when the choke's closed, that will allow, if the air needs to be sucked in a little bit, this little door will open up. If I put it in this way, there's no point of having that there. It just runs flat. So we're gonna go this way with it, because I haven't gone back and referenced the video of how I took it apart, which is one of the nice things about having a video. I guess if you got questions, you go back and take a look. But I have him in there. Next, we'll hopefully take a steady hand to try and get a screw seated in there. There we go. Come on, buddy. We'll fumble through this a little bit. Okay. Try and get one. I may fast forward through this part so you guys can appreciate my frustrations and, like I said, see things that don't always just jump into place like they're supposed to. When one's not doing a video, those just hop right on there and no problem. So we'll tighten those up decent, because nobody wants a screw. Coming loose and ending up in your engine. All right. Choke in place. Main jet nozzle in place. I guess I should use the appropriate term. That's a power adjusting nozzle, or the power nozzle, or call it what you will. We can go to the bottom. Just put our plug in there. Tried to find one that wasn't all stripped. Little 7/16 wrench puts that in place. And that takes us to the load adjusting mechanism here. Got our little needle, threads into this little nut. Now, that's going to fit up inside there. Originally, it had this little crusty O-ring up in there, which is kind of brittle and falling apart. Yeah, I was able to get my little O-ring kit and find one that was fairly close. We're going to put that kind of over the edge like so. Put that together. And this little, call it a seal gasket or ring, goes on there. I'm pretty sure I had the right one, but maybe I have the wrong one. Maybe it's supposed to be my other one I've got over here. Let's try that one. Ah, there we go. Back in place. 7/16 wrench. Tightens him up. Loosen that up there. Make sure this is see, that kind of locks it in there. So it instructs us to turn this needle in all the way and then back it out one turn once you've hit the bottom. And then there's adjustments that can be made from there once you have your engine up and running. So there's a turn. We'll just go a little farther just for fun, just to make it symmetrical. Kind of lock him in. And that pretty much takes care of all the parts for the lower half. So now we can move up here to the upper half. The upper half, we're going to put our float back in. I've tried cleaning this up as best I can. This was a little cruddy on this one. It's not a bad idea to check your float ahead of time to make sure there's no leaks. A simple, quick, easy way of doing that is just get a little cup of water, and this is the float from the other carburetor. Just sort of stick it down in there, and if you're seeing air bubbles come up, you know there's a bit of a compromise. But if we're floating, then we're in good shape. So all good, it seems. I checked this float earlier. I figured have it ready to go to put back together and not have it all wet as I was trying to do so. For starters, the little Venturi is going to go in first, and I believe it sits in that way. So this is going to go in first because the gasket that we put on will not allow that to pass through. So he's going to go in there, and then we're going to, well, before we get too far with the gasket, we got to put our little baby jets in there. And the smaller of the two, this little guy, which our little diagram over here, I think they call that one the, is that the economizer jet maybe? Yes, that would be the economizer. Good name. Let's see if we can, I don't know if I can put him on the end of the screwdriver, then get him in there. Set him on like so. Yeah, try not to fumble it too badly. There. I can probably just drop him in the little hole. It's a slippery little sucker. Make sure we got the correct end up, which I do see a little slot in there, so I think we got him in there the right way. Yeah. Seated. And this one, this might be the idle jet if I'm looking on here. Yeah, idle jet. So he's going to go. I've done the same thing with these that I did with the big nozzle. I took the little carb cleaner, stuck it in the end with the nozzle, and just made sure that our port is clear. If I can line it up, what we should see is a stream. Yeah, shooting out. Nice. So that tells me that it's free and clear. Drop him in there. Get my little drivers a little. There we are. seat it in place. Then we can put our little needle valve assembly in here, and for that I do have a new set. This was another that came with one of my other kits. I'll put the little ring on there because I kind of hacked apart the old one getting it out. So he'll sit on there. Screw him in. It's kind of a wide spread on that slot. They probably have a special tool that's meant to put that in. I just get the biggest screwdriver I can find and kind of spread it as evenly as I can. Try and get it fairly tight, as much as it's going to let me. Like I said, there's probably a carburetor specific gadget that one would not tear this up the way you're probably watching me do it. Right in the middle. I think we got them in there pretty good. Now we'll drop our little needle in there. I'm hoping that tip, I mean, I use non-ethanol gas in these things, but I think the tip may hold up a little bit to the more modern gases and stuff out there. And that guy's job is going to be to kind of raise and lower and kind of close and open to allow fuel in as the float deems it necessary. So that's all in place. Now I believe we can put our little gasket on here. Our little venturi's up through there. Good. So with that in place, we can put the float on. And as I'm thinking about this, it might make more sense to try and put our throttle together. I'm going to have this gasket flopping around down here, so we don't really need to do that just yet. Why don't we go up here and put our throttle shaft and our baffle back inside. Throttle shaft has this little seal right here that will sit up inside. If I remember reading the one thing the instructions did say is to put the seal and the little retainer on the shaft itself before putting it in there. It may be easier to do that than to try and put them in place on the carburetor. And if you put that in there, we'll see what happens. That's all we can do. See if we put that in, and if we tap that up in place, there we go. I guess we can push it in there. It's in there, but it's not in there as much as I'd like it to be, so I'm just going to take the old tapper and tap them flush. So then throttle shaft goes in, like so, nice and snug. The throttle baffle can only go in there one way. I believe it's this way, and you can see the old line. So I know that part goes down against the shaft there, and I think it goes in this way. It's kind of offset a little bit. Yeah, just like that. And this will be another matter of me fumbling around with little screws, trying to get them in place. Just want to get one started in there, and we'll do the same on the other side, in theory. I know you really can't see what I'm doing down in there, but it's better to have it flat to get it started, and then I can show you the result once we have it in place. So again, we're gonna tighten those real well. We don't want any screws getting sucked up into our intake. There we are. More air, more fuel. No air, no fuel. That's how that setup is meant to be. And probably put our little inlet in here. Simple little installation that way. It has to face this direction. That's where the inlet comes in. So just about horizontal. Right about like so. Put our idle needle in here. This is another one where the little guide says to put it all the way in until it stops. Then take it out a full turn, and then more adjustments can be made from there once you have it on the tractor and the engine's running. Now we can go back to our little underside. Throw our little needle in here, gasket venturi back in place. And then comes the float. The float will go right on top. Our little pin holds him in place. Now, according to our little book, we're supposed to have a 1/4 inch between the float and the top of the gasket there. I guess the top of our body. We may have a little bit more than that. It's fairly close, fairly horizontal, fairly level. You can kind of see what's going to hopefully happen when I'm not sure if I can get this in the light, maybe there. Right back in here, when our float goes up, that needle valve is going to go up and seat, and then hopefully the pressure of the fuel is enough that needle will come back down. When the float's dropping down, there's not enough fuel in the bowl, that'll drop down and allow more fuel to come in. That's kind of how that's meant to work. So hopefully there'll be no sticking with that. With that married together, we go and we measure our dimension between here, the top of the float, 1/4 inch. Once we're good with that, we can make the sandwich complete and drop our 2 pieces together. And with that, try and set some screws in place. Snug them up. Just like that, we have a carburetor that might actually function. Once we put it back on the tractor and make some adjustments. Not too complicated. Again, I apologize to any professionals out there that may look at what I'm doing and shake their head. And sure, I'll hear about it, which is fine. I can take it, but like I say, I'm just a guy that likes doing things himself, and at least the results kind of pretty. Once I throw a coat, I'm going to probably go ahead and put a coat of epoxy primer on this before I go and spray the color eventually. And I may tape off the little brass plaque on the front and maybe the load adjuster on the bottom just because they look pretty, but otherwise it'll be all green before too long, and hopefully functional. So with that, that's carburetor number 1. Now we'll move on to carburetor number 2. Reassembly of carburetor number 2. We're going to put this carburetor back together with that full kit that we had bought from Steiner Tractor Parts. It has everything, almost everything, that you'd want to replace some of your old parts with. We are still going to retain the original float, the little inlet, elbow, choke bracket, the venturi. I'm going to keep the original choke valve, not choke, the throttle valve. The original's kind of heavier, like a brass. The replacement's just lighter aluminum. I suppose it probably worked fine, but I like the original one better. The choke valve, original, it's nice. I guess the new one's cleaner. They're both about the same as far as heft, so I can set that one to the side. The kit provides this little petcock that you could put to drain. I think it's a little tacky. It doesn't quite look original, so we're going to stick with the original plug that also comes with the kit. And I'm probably going to use my original screws that hold the top and bottom together. The new ones are just a little too shiny, and they're probably not going to hold paint very well, so we'll set them off to the side as well. And with that, we can start probably with our bottom piece again. Probably just like before. I'll start with putting the main nozzle back in there. One thing I did notice is on this nozzle we're supposed to have a little gasket, I suppose you could call it, that goes on that. It's kind of loose and it's a little big around. It actually doesn't seat very well up inside the carburetor body, so for better or for worse, I'm going to grab the original one, slide it on there, and kind of use that just because it is a more appropriate fit. And we'll put that back in place. I almost forgot. On this one, I left it on the original, but we're going to have a little doodad that holds our choke cable that goes on here. And that will go like so, held in place with our little clip, like that. And this screw is going to be what ultimately secures our cable in place when that comes to be. Now we can slide our little spring on there. Wrong way. Circle to carburetor, and then we can make sure that that little U is going to be on our little arm there. my coffee's worn off from this morning. Otherwise, I'd probably be a lot more jittery. See if I can get this bigger screwdriver. Yeah, I don't quite have enough bite. So, go back to our one that we know fits. My problem with that spring is it wants to flip that out of place, so when we're tightening our screws we have to hold that in position. Good. I think we'll be okay with that. These aftermarket parts, I'm almost twisting that and just kind of bending the metal, so you can tell maybe the quality is not what the original was. And okay, and that more or less puts our bottom component back together. Okay, the bottom part's together. We can put our top half back together. I think last time we started, I put in the little needle seat in place. Sometimes on these new kits, these threads can be kind of sharp, a little tight. Sometimes I'll just ever so slightly touch that with like the wire wheel to maybe kind of take some of that bite off so they go in a little bit easier. And as you maybe are able to see on this guy, that's a pretty wide spacing from one end to the other. I don't have a screwdriver that's quite that big to span the opening back and forth. So I've got this little scraper here that might just be enough to get us snugly in place. Make sure we're happy with that. Good. And that's going to be where the little needle will live down in there, and when the float raises and lowers, it'll open and close that, allow fuel to flow. This one has one of those little fancy clips that's going to secure the needle to the float. This way there's a little less risk of that float, the needle sticking in the seat. So with that in there, we'll bump over to the throttle linkage and shaft. One thing I wanted to bring to the attention is, I mean, I could probably use the original on this one. It's not in too bad a shape, but one thing one wants to look for is potential wear in that opening where you're going to have your linkage kind of set in. If you can see the screwdriver here, there's just a little bit of not much play in the original, where this other one I had from a different carburetor, there's quite a bit of laxity in there, and that's going to make for a sloppy fuel linkage. If you have that, you definitely want to replace your shaft with a new one. And even here, there's just a little bit, but that's probably more the diameter of the screwdriver than there is an issue with the shaft itself. So with that, again, these screws kind of make me nervous, if I'm honest. I'm gonna bypass those. I'm gonna get my originals here, because whether they fit in this new shaft correctly or not, I guess that remains to be seen. It's just when I was putting them in the choke down there, they seem to twist very easy with the screwdriver. And just feel like I can crank these down a little bit more, and they're gonna, and for good measure I may go back and replace the choke ones as well. If I lose sleep over it, that's what we'll end up doing. Okay, now that's seated all the way, and I have to go read what the adjustment is on this one, but I'm going to turn him so there's just ever so slightly a little bit of room there. Very good. We have our new, now that we've thrown all our parts around, our new idle adjust. I guess we can kind of start him in there. We should probably go back and put our jets in up in here. Now we got our new idle jet. He goes right in there. Baby screwdriver, where are you? Let's see if we can get him started. It's the bigger of the two, so we know he's in the right spot. Again, I wonder how much of this is going to be those new threads being a little cantankerous to work with. You can hear him screaming. I don't want to go in. Let's see if this fits down in there. Yeah, not quite. Well, look at that. Now that is a problem. See, these new parts, I know, new isn't always good. What we have here is our fine new little jet just cracked in half. So that means is I'm going to have to find a clever way of getting him out. Here we can still turn him. Just barely. I'm questioning using all these replacement parts. Maybe I should just put the original car back on the tractor if all this is how this is going to work. If it flakes apart that easy, I mean, I know he's a fragile little piece, but still, junk. All right, I'm back. I found an original economizer and idle jet, and we'll see if those go back in. Hopefully better than what the new stuff did. I know these are going on 60-some years old, but you don't make it like they used to's. Kind of relevant on this project. Alright, guys, I did go ahead and check these with the carb cleaners to make sure that everything flowed through, everything's patent. So we've got good passageways. I'm going to put him down in there. That screwdriver's too big. I know I brought this guy over for that very reason. And in. Okay, those two jets are in place. Now I can maybe seat this guy here all the way in. According to the book, out. One turn, we'll go 1 1/4 for fun. Okay. That's going to take us back down to sneaking our little gasket in place. I guess the gasket's nice. I give the kit that. Can't complain about the gasket. Looks a little better than mine. And our float. Oh, I almost forgot. We got to sneak our little Venturi in there. Which way does he fit in there? Like so. So this goes to the top. This goes like so. Okay, with that in place. Now I was talking about our little needle sliding in that little clip, and that little clip is going to fit on our float like that. Like so. Drop him in. And place. So yeah, what that little clip's going to do is it's going to raise and lower the needle. Needle's not going to get stuck in that assembly as easily, which can happen. I've had that happen many a time where carburetor tractor sits for a while. Sometimes the gunk, if you got some old gas, will cause that needle to stick in that little receptacle. So you want a 1/4 inch between your float and your gasket surface, I guess we'll say in this situation. I say we're pretty close to that. And we can, uh-oh. Director says time to wrap things up. Losing the battery on my light up there. I put some additional lighting in so you get a better see of what I'm doing. I tell you. Reality videoing doesn't get any better. Probably gonna flash a couple more times before it goes out, so I'll try and wrap this up with getting our screws in place. Makes me feel better about not using the screws from the kit. Who knows if they'd break off if I twisted them too tight. I'm just going around and getting these somewhat snug before I kind of crank them down. And I almost forgot, we got to put a little inlet elbow in there. Point him backwards like that. Imagine that's going to be tight enough if I somehow get gas leaking from that. I'll work on giving him another turn. That is pretty much going to cover carburetor number 2. Which one will I use? That'll be the question. I don't know. I kind of half trust the old parts after seeing those jets sort of disintegrate. But either way, we got 1, we got 2. Appreciate you watching. If seeing me take these apart and put them back together is at all helpful to you, or maybe just entertaining, I do have some more videos of what I'm going to do with this tractor. Hopefully get the whole thing put back together, restored one day. As you can kind of see, there's a project in place over here with the hydraulic unit. I'll probably post a video for that as well. But this is a TSX 688 carburetor utilized on a John Deere, in this case 430 2-cylinder tractor. It may have other applications. With that, I appreciate you watching, and maybe we'll see you next time.